Ja, herzlich willkommen zur Mission Safety Digital.
Yes, welcome to Mission Safety Digital at A+A here Wednesday afternoon, the second day of our live event. Today we're going to talk about the reduction of limit values, and before getting into this in any detail, I'd like to point out a few technical information for you. First of all, you can use the chat at the bottom of the screen window. You can use that for giving us your responses, any suggestions, any ideas, any questions you may have. You would also have, maybe you have a QR code compatible mobile phone. You can use this for giving us more feedback, for maybe applause and a like, or also taking part in our surveys later, also giving us applause. Here is the code for the QR scanner. And down below, especially after the session, you can communicate with us through this email address.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen.
Hi, a warm welcome to this year's A+A.
Ja, das war doch ein cooles Video, ein guter Einstieg. Nochmal herzlich willkommen an alle, die jetzt zugeschaltet sind.
So warm welcome to all of you who've tuned in, and I'm glad to have you here. Today we're going to talk about reductions of limit values, and especially the reduction of the TRGS 900-910. I've got some competent partners here in the studio, but before, I'd like to point out that in German we use the du form, which of course is no relevant for English, but in German we use the intimate form of address, du. I am Kim Petz. I work for Dräger as event manager for the German region, and I have the honor of conducting you through the session today. First of all, the question is often asked about our hygiene regulations. Well, I have to say that both in the studio here and at the trade fair booth, we observe what we call in Germany the 3G rules, which means everybody has to be either vaccinated or cured or recently tested negatively. Now, we were here this morning, of course, and we've had already 2 sessions today, and one session today, and I want to tell you that this is everything we do is being recorded in art, and for that I have to switch to my friend Ingrid in Berlin, who's the artist. Hi, I'm Ingrid Benze, the artist in Berlin, and I'm specialized in following events and keeping track of the ideas visually, like an artistic form. And I could show you maybe a few pictures of what I've done, but at the end I'm going to show you also what information I've gleaned, what stimulus and inspiration I've taken from this session. Now, I'll show you from this morning session. I'm going to share my screen with you. First of all, we're talking about smart safety, and of course this relates to digitization, and I also draw with this digital tool. The great thing about it is that it automatically prepares a video of my drawings, so I can show you my drawings here behind the scenes. That's my perspective of how I work. You see, it's I start maybe in the middle and then left, right, top, bottom. It goes through very quickly by means of this automatic digitized system, and they're all the impulses and impressions I got from our smart session this morning. Maybe in the future it's going to allow us all to sit at home in our home office with a cup of coffee and our household pets, while everything is so far digitized that we don't have to be present on site anymore. Just very briefly, hold on, I'll see, can I get this up on my screen for you? I'll go back to the studio. I'm going to show you what it's like in my studio. I've got a lot of colorful pictures behind me because I work a lot. And I've got a lot of highlights from yesterday. This is from your trade fair booth and all the happy and enthusiastic people that turned up and the very lively exchange that took place there. And of course, yesterday we talked about demographic change and what that means for staff in a company and personal protection we talked about, and the different problems and issues like heat and the noise of these suits, which are of course remedied by the Dräger products, light breathing protection. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about some of these later today too. And my highlight is the FFP mask dispenser, which I would really love to have in my studio here, so at home even. So I'm going to pass the ball back to you in the studio. Thank you, Ingrid. We're going to meet you again at the end of the session. And we're looking forward to the pictures that you've been inspired to create from this session. So see you then. Now, as Ingrid just said, we have everything online, and even the sessions from yesterday are already online. Just look at our websites and you can see them. Yesterday's sessions are already available online for you. And as I said, I've got some competent support here. But first I'm going to switch over to our trade fair booth. Anneliese is there, and she's got a new companion, Daniel. Yes, as you said, that's right. Daniel Buddha is here beside me. Daniel is very much in demand here. I really had to fight to get him over here for my session. Now, Daniel, you're the expert for the area of gas detection. That's true. I'm responsible for marketing in Germany and gas detection technology. And as Anneliese said, we've got really a lot to do. There's very strong demand here for these products. We've got some highlights to show you, but first, Daniel, a few sneak previews. Well, first of all, we're talking about limit values, so we're going to talk about the Exact 700 and the XPID 9500 and the Exact 7000. Okay, that's a good introduction, first of all. But now I'm going to pass back to you, Kim, because you've got a special guest there in the studio. I'll talk to you later. Yes, great. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you later, but first I want to go over to my meeting corner. A guest is waiting for me. This is Stefan. Hi, Kim. Yes, welcome. I can say Stefan Denker is my name. I've been over 30 years in Dräger in various functions, and at the moment I'm conducting or leading the market team for industry, and also a manager here of our booth at the A+A. Yeah, Stefan, for the next half an hour we're going to talk about limit values. Maybe that's a bit dry of a subject for a lot of people. What does that mean for you? Well, really I've grown up with this subject, at least in my Dräger career. I started with being responsible for the external measuring center, and I did workplace evaluation in terms of how workers are exposed to hazardous substances. And since then, I've been in contact with all authorities and federations of employers, etc. And this subject of reducing or falling limit values is something that's, of course, very relevant for us too, and that's something that's happening both on the German and on the European level. Okay, thank you. Changes now or reductions in the limits for TRGS 900, 910. Could you tell us what that really means? Well, in Germany, there is a committee for hazardous substances that deals specifically with this subject. And for some years, they've been looking at this TRGS 910. That's risk-based measures for activities with carcinogenic substances, and that's a long title, but it generally means that we're protecting workers against carcinogenic substances that may be in their working environment. And the committee has now announced that the lower level for this risk is going to be reduced, so it's going to be limited again, means the acceptable values will fall, become even lower, more stringent, and that means ultimately that we need to do there's going to be a planned review of the TRGS 900, 910. That isn't really ready yet, but it will be soon. We're waiting for this announcement. And parallel to that, at the European level, there's also a big issue regarding limit values and reduction of limits, both for carcinogenic substances and other hazardous substances. And the TRGS 900, which is the normal workplace limit, will be affected by this European regulation. So I see that obviously has a major impact on everyday work in the plants. That's true. If people are working with hazardous substances, they have to make an assessment, they have to verify that the measures they've taken and protection equipment are sufficient, and if necessary, this will have to be externally audited if they've deviated from the levels, from the designated levels too much. And if necessary, their whole procedures, equipment, measures have to be reviewed and replaced. Okay, great. Now I'd like to turn to you, our audience, and ask you, how interested are you in this subject and how important it is for you? We have now a VOXR survey planned, and for that you need, of course, this app for the QR scanner app. And the question for you, once you log in with this QR code, is the subject of limit values interesting, and to what degree? How important is it for you? And then you see you've got 5 different levels, like something that I'm very concerned about, and next one is we already have it on the agenda, and then we have already mentioned it. You can say that it's going down in importance down to the bottom till the very last one is irrelevant for us. And so you see there are the results, and it's very top-heavy, you can say. Stefan, what do you think? Well, even though this new regulation for the TRG 900, the new regulation hasn't been implemented yet, you can see that a lot of people are still very concerned about it, or are already dealing with it. That's very important, because very often people wait until something has been implemented and only then do they start thinking about it. But I think that's definitely very good to see that people even now at this early stage are already involved in this issue. Great. Now stay please in your VOXR connection, because we have another question for you here. Again, scanning with the QR code. The subject here is what thematic areas in limit value reduction are interested for you, and you can click on several of these options, and we're interested in seeing what results come here. I see that, whoa, some are coming in already. Well, it's a very mixed picture, but again, top-heavy. Could you say anything about that? Well, again, that's more or less what I anticipated too. You know, there are different limit values, maybe the measuring equipment they have and detection systems in the plants, in the different businesses aren't enough. And that's why they come to us, and they're right to come to us with inquiries about advice. How can I solve this problem? How can I find out more? What information is necessary? What measures are necessary? And these are answers that we will always be able to give to our customers and to anybody interested, but especially at this trade fair too. Okay, good. Thank you. Now keep your mobile phone ready, because we're going to use them again. But let's switch over to Daniel now, who has seen this survey, and I'd like to get the first impressions back from the trade fair booth. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Stefan. That was a very interesting survey. Daniel, now what about you as a marketing manager for mobile gas detection? You encounter customers and their various needs frequently. Is that something that you expected? Yes, I think first of all it's great that the viewers take part in this, obviously so actively. I'm quite surprised that people are already so involved in it and know about it and seem to be already thinking about it, you know. And I think it's something that we've been dealing with a long time, and it's really great to see that the market is also dealing with it. Yes, so it's very relevant for the customers, it seems. Is that something that you've experienced, like here at the trade fair today and yesterday? Actually, indeed, I have. We have been visited by so many people, and they say we have certain limit values. How can I measure them? What advice can you give to us? Or how do you think it's going to change in the future? What advice can you give me in this regard? So I've really got a lot to do. How do you think Dräger is going to react to this changing situation in terms of its product portfolio? Well, Dräger has been looking at that for a long time. You know, it's no big surprise to us, of course, maybe 5 or 6 years, and we're adjusting our detection and measuring equipment accordingly. So the PPB area, we have to change an adjustment because we have to give our customers the tools and equipment they need for fulfilling the regulations that apply directly to them. Okay, great. Kim, I'm sure you have a lot prepared for us to do, but I'll talk to you later directly. Yes, thank you. As you said, we'll talk to each other later again, but we're going to proceed here first of all. First of all, I'd like to know what our customers think when these, or how are they going to, what problems will they face when the change in the regulation change? Well, the customers already have to deal with this hazard assessment. That covers several points. First of all, how often does it have to be tested? According to what parameters? Can other substances be used instead of some others? What about the medical officers in the plant? They have to decide whether the measures are appropriate. And what about our protecting strategy and equipment, protection equipment? They have to be adjusted accordingly too as the requirements change. So there's a lot to think about. And we're always ready to give everybody support in this regard, no matter what kind. Can you think of what individual cases do you think do our services and products fulfill? Well, we've got a hazardous substance database on our website, and you know, you can see this. Anybody can use this to enter the, first of all, you enter the substance that you deal with, some hazardous substance, and then maybe if you can switch to the monitor. I think you have something prepared for this. Yes, we have. Hold on, I'm going to see if we can switch to our...
da sehen wir schon was. Genau, sehr gut. Genau, also bei der Gefahrstoffdatenbank Voice, wie gesagt, man kann dort über verschiedene...
Voice is the database, right? And you can enter any substance you're interested in there, and then you're going to see information about this hazardous substance. And the reference to the data safety sheet and an evaluation of this material, and then direct recommendations and information regarding the protective equipment, protective clothing, the measuring equipment, detection equipment you need, anything that you need for making the selection, making the assessment that every employer is obliged to make. So if you enter several hazardous substances in your file, you enter them there like in sequence, and then you see certain, if we have certain products, let's say, that cover all of them, or some of them, or 2 of them, or each one individually, or whatever, we then provide that information. Okay, the Dräger Voice tool, we saw this yesterday, so it seems to have many uses. Okay, measuring strategy, detecting strategy, when the regulations change. What do you think the customers will have to do? Well, the measuring and detecting strategy means that employers will have to look to verify that they have the right detection systems, machines and tools to see if they've got the right range for the products that will be relevant in this regard. So This relates to each individual substance, whether the limit values are reached or not. And as I said, like our experts here at the trade fair booth is definitely able to give anybody who comes around information, further information and advice in this regard. So we're going to switch over to them now, Daniel and Anneliese, to see what else they have to show us now. Great, thank you for switching back. We're at the trade fair booth and we have Dräger Voice. Let's say online here. It's a great tool for getting the right PSAs and the right measuring technology, and especially in relation to limit values, we have exactly the right equipment for every application. So, Daniel, could you talk about the products that you've taken as examples? Yes, we're looking at XPIT 9500. We heard about that in the voice video. When we have to verify or measure values, these are the perfect measuring equipment. This is the 9500. That's the measuring system. It works together with the smartphone, and it's perfect for VLC measurement. That means their volatile compounds are measured by this. They are all toxic and carcinogenic substances. All of these substances we talked about that are covered by the TRGS 900, 910. You don't have to bring your materials to the laboratory. You can do it on site. You can measure up to all the ppb levels that are relevant in this regard, and you also don't have any test material. You just go to the location and start measuring. That's all. So it's a very sustainable variation, you see, and very smart, linked to the smartphone. Oops, I've knocked that over. Okay, we're going to look at that now.
So ist es. Daneben haben wir hier aber
noch here I've switched it on, right? Now we've got another one here, the Exact 7000. Okay, a lot of our customers know the old Dräger system. That's the Exact 7000. This system now, the Exact 7000, gives you directly, immediately laboratory analysis, and it works together with these miniature microtubes, right? So, you know, there's a different process here, but it does very good measurements. You simply insert them into the measuring equipment. This is measuring with laboratory quality. That's the whole idea behind Exact. So sometimes we have to have release measurements, and that does that. So it's got a small pump here, but also we have a coupler with the Dräger pump. You know, you can extract your test samples from the particular location without exposing yourself to any danger. Great systems, thanks very much. You wanted to show us something on the smartphone. Okay, we have now here the XPIT, and maybe you can't hear the pump, but I can hear the pump. It's running in the background, and we have a smartphone, and we see it's in search mode, right? You know, the XPIT works with a search mode, so you can walk around your machines, walk around your plant, to get your measurements, and then when you see a zoom or volume signal, it makes, let's say, an analysis here of organic volatile substances, and then I can see where does this measurement come from. That's a zoom signal, and I can go into the different analysis programs. We've got a big database there, and then the smartphone accesses all of this data, keeps up to date, and so we have a very, very up-to-date and very large database that the measurements can be assessed against. Okay, thank you very much. Now, you said beforehand that you've got other items in the portfolio, and I took one of the items you mentioned. Here it is for you. Okay, great, another device in my hand, I like it. Okay, another thing we have for limit values, we come from classic work protection, personnel protection, so this is something that's held by the person, and we can work here with NPD sensors. Now we've got two sensors here. We can do a PID low sensitive concentration that's so sensitive that we can go straight into the measurement area, and below we've got a very, very wide range, and we can measure exactly what's relevant in terms of the low limit values. Okay, great. Thank you very much. A great introduction, great presentation of these items. Now, back to the studio. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Annalisa. Now, you mentioned PID measurements. Stefan, what do you think? How relevant or how interesting is that for our viewers? Yes, we could ask many things, but as we've heard, they're very different systems, very many versatile systems, and according to what the requirements are in the different factories or production locations. So again, individual supplies and individual deliveries for individual needs is what we're aiming at. Now, that's why we'd like to conduct this survey. Again, you scan the QR code and then take part in this survey. The question to be answered here is, how often are PID measurements carried out at your place of business? And I can already see the first results coming in. Again, very much on top, but in this case, actually, it's not at all is the top one. Not at all is the top one at 57%. So it looks like that people really aren't so interested in it or don't carry out these tests. But let's say those who do carry out these tests seem to be doing it frequently. So it goes from not at all to daily is then a very, very high. So those who do carry out the test do so very regularly. Okay, great. Now, as I said, we're going to have other questions to ask you, so please keep your mobile ready. Actually, here's the other one. Directly scan again using the code. Our question here is, let's say that a measuring device with the XPID 9500 provides measurement values non-stop for you. Would that be a major, or how would that be a major advantage for you? Tell us whether it would be an advantage, a big benefit for you or not. I see that a kind of a result pattern is forming here. Well, what do you think there? Yes, I think again here you see that for many applications it's not yet so relevant, or at least it's not known to be relevant. People aren't really aware of it yet. And then on-site locations seem to take place at the various machines and workplaces. So it is a very interesting result, actually. It shows that there's really a lot of work to do, which is a good thing also. Okay, thank you for being so interactively present with us, also giving us back some information from your experience. Let's now switch back to the fair booth to see what Daniel and Annalisa has. Thank you. That's an interesting survey. Daniel, what do you think of that? Is that in line with your experience here as a fair booth? I think it's interesting that our viewers are asking the same questions more or less that I've heard here at the booth. People come and say, you know, I have these regulations, I have these stipulations, how can I measure them? And then we show them the XPID. And that seems to be really what the people at home watching on their screens want too. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now, today we were talking about PID measurements a lot. You talked about different MES modes. And we see here XPID in the super mode. Okay, this now gives signals. I've got a gas database installed here, or rather it's linked to it. And I want to show you now, it's in search mode. So let's say it's looking for organic compounds. Of course, there's always something in the air. And let's say if an analysis program is running, I can look according to different parameters or according to different substances in the database, of course. But, you know, when we're talking about the measuring performance, you get the results very promptly. So there are two modes, just to get that right. Yes, it's in permanent search modus. Let's say the battery runs for 3 hours, but let's say I want to get into the analysis program now, so I start it. So it goes from searching to analysis, even though searching continues. It takes about 30 seconds, then 60 seconds for processing, and we see benzene 0.5, 25.0 ppm, so it's very, very sensitive. You see in this ppb area, ppm area also, you see it's very, very low values, but they're still detected by this very sensitive equipment. So remember, we're looking for benzene, and after the 30 seconds that I have to wait, you see it takes the point, the substance, checks it against the database, and then you see the chromatogram for benzene at the bottom. You know, you see that benzene is being measured there. And of course, thank God, there's no benzene in the air, no carcinogenic substances around us, at least not in this respect. And we see that there are other organic systems here, because if you know there are adhesives, and Monday this was all put together in this trade fair, so there are certain adhesives. You really have to look at that and analyze it and think about it. So it gives anybody and everybody very valuable information. The information and the readings can be saved, can be compared and processed, and we show it to everybody here. If anybody wants to come around, we're here till Thursday. So thank you very much. That was really an interesting live demo of all the substances that are in the air we breathe. Very, very sensitive, so you can see we've got great equipment here. I think it's quite comforting to know that at least we've got this very sensitive detection device beside us here. Okay, I'd like now to switch back to you in the studio. Thank you, Anneliese. Thanks, Daniel. And also for this very interesting contribution there. I'd like to correct actually what Daniel said. We're not here till Thursday, but till Friday.
Halle 6. Wir freuen uns. Machen wir hier weiter. Stichwort Digitalisierung. Gibt es dazu noch was zu sagen?
Let's talk about digitization in this regard. Well, of course, digitization is getting more important. We saw that in the pandemic, and in these businesses, you know, everybody is thinking about how work protection, measuring systems, detection systems can be enhanced with digitization. And we see that in the CSE Connect system, that's linked, and connectivity is part of that. You know, that's a system for making release measurements, and it accelerates the whole process, makes the whole thing more efficient and more accurate. And then the smartphone, working with the XPID, can directly work with the processing system, so the results are much more readily and quickly available for you. Of course, it's just a normal smartphone. And the smartphone can then send the results, you know, detection values, measurement values to some addressee if the data is important. So you see that it's becoming more and more important and providing greater and greater safety and reliability. Great, thank you. We're almost at the end of our session now. Now, at the beginning, we asked you to, we invited you to ask questions, and some questions have in the meantime arrived. I'd like to ask Stefan, what about the old CMS devices? Can they still be used? Yes, well, even if they look very, very similar to what we have here, unfortunately they won't be used much longer, because of course in the 7000 we're using new technology and for getting more information from the chip, and the old ones had a barcode on the chip that was read out, and they can hold only a limited amount of data, and the new ones are microtube chips, so There's very special chips installed there. It allows us to collect much more information and communicate this information between the microtubes and the device itself. So unfortunately, you can't use the old ones anymore. Okay, second question I have here. Could you maybe tell us the new limit values? Well, I don't have them in my head, no, not all of them anyway, but ultimately, you know, in the TRGS 910, there's a tolerance situation and there's an acceptance situation. So the acceptance is, the plans are that the acceptance level is going to be reduced tenfold. So if you take benzene, now we were testing for that, the tolerance concentration is 0.6 ppm, and today's acceptance is 0.06 ppm, and in the future, with a factor 10, if this reduction finally does take place, so it's going to be 0.006, so 6 parts per million. You know, that's going to be the new limit value, which is a very, very significant lowering of the threshold value. You can see this in the German authorities have their website, and they're giving you all the individual values, threshold values. You can also check it on the European website. That's EU OSHA. OSHA is the European authority that also keep you up to date on the changing value limits. Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Now we've more or less reached our conclusion to our session, but because it was so interesting, particularly interesting this time, I want to see what Ingrid, our artist, was inspired to create by the information we've heard today. Hi, Ingrid.
Hallo ins Studio.
Na, zeig uns doch mal, wie deine
Ingrid,
Zusammenfassung
could you show us your summary?
Ja, du hast gesagt, du bist ganz gespannt, wie mein Bild
You said you're really looking forward to seeing the pictures this time. Well, sometimes I get surprised by my own creations here, and I'll tell you, with limit values, you know, it's not exactly something I really knew much about as an illustrator, but I made a bit of effort to find or to come up with pictures and images that give you this idea. And as Daniel said at the booth, it's a very special subject. So it's obviously not as easy as I illustrated here, but is more abstract. And that's why I created this abstract art work to show the limit values, to see that there's green where you can go, orange where there's caution, red where it's forbidden, and the way they're changing all the time. Now, I normally don't work with surface, I work with lines, but I made an exception here because these limits are fluctuating so much. Although it seems to be that they're going all in one direction, they're becoming more stringent. And the regulators are coming here, they're coming here with the new laws, and you see they're changing the goalposts, changing the limits all the time. So the unfortunate employer is faced with this dilemma, and that's why it's a very good idea for him to go to Dräger with its advice and technical solutions that will help him come to terms with this. And here are the products, you know. To see them, it was very interesting for me to see them and also to see them in action. We have here a person carrying out the measuring. Maybe I'm not doing this right. That's the way I imagine it. Maybe somebody has to wear something, especially when he's going detecting for hazardous substances, but that's just the way I imagine it as an outsider. And then these substances are in different colors. His system is recording that. They talked about Dräger voice, and you see there's somebody behind with a quite hazardous looking substance, doesn't know what they do, but then they find it in the database of Dräger voice of hazardous substances, and they make an assessment of how risky that is and what information they need, the employer needs for dealing with that, and what protective equipment he needs. and that means measurements can take place properly, and the measurer and the person taking precautions will be working on the same line and find everything right, that they can continue with a green light for further manufacture and further business. Great, Ingrid. That was really one of your better creations, I think, altogether. Looks really good. I'd like to see them again sometime. Thank you very much again. Stefan, we're at the end. Maybe one or two concluding sentences from you? Few remarks? Well, manufacturers and businesses, of course, are exposed to problems from these changes to different degrees, you know. I just kind of advise everybody to find out as early as possible how relevant they are for you. Do you have to adjust to these new threshold values? What equipment do you need? What measurements do you have to take? Are your machines and equipment, or the tools and equipment you use for measuring, are they adequate for measuring these new, very sensitive ranges? And if you want anything, get in touch with us. You can contact us anytime for advice and information. Okay, thank you very much. It was really great. I wish you all a very successful trade fair. If anybody wants to come around and speak to Stefan or anybody else, come around. We're here till Friday at the A+A in Düsseldorf, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. But now it's time for me to say goodbye. We're at the end of this session. Just I'd like to point out that at 3 p.m. we're going to talk about service. Until then, you can use the chat. The colleagues are still there, or the email, which we gave you before. And for those of you who weren't there yesterday or this morning, just check out our YouTube channel. You can see all the sessions are there, and you can check them out.